Thank you for joining us for Wrestling with Right-to-Left Scripts, Practical Workarounds for Using NVivo with Arabic, Hebrew, Urdu, and Farsi, or other right-to-left scripts. My name is Laura Lagendijk, and I've been using NVivo since long before it was called NVivo. I am a QSR Certified Platinum NVivo trainer. I teach and consult with others about how to use NVivo in their projects as an independent consultant in my business called QuotesWork, located in the foothills of the Rocky Mountains in southern Alberta in Canada. And Steve will introduce himself when he has his part of the presentation. Let me begin with some of the background and purpose of our presentation. Although NVivo is an excellent tool for most qualitative data analysis projects, one challenge researchers and trainers sometimes encounter is working with right-to-left scripts, such as Arabic. And NVivo does not seamlessly accommodate this kind of data or other files that are in right-to-left scripts. And for researchers and teams working with this kind of data, it presents some significant challenges. I became much more aware of this problem when I was working with a research team earlier this year who were proposing to use publicly available online data in Arabic. The team could use Encapture to gather the data, but the generated PDFs did not consistently capture the text correctly, nor did it always import accurately into NVivo. And even when data capture and import were accurate, NVivo, of course, did not recognize the text as text, so text-based coding wasn't possible, and coding the PDF by region had its own challenges. When brainstorming solutions for this dilemma, I contacted Steve as another NVivo trainer, as I knew he'd written a blog addressing the issue, and that blog is referenced on the bottom of this slide. Between us, we came up with a number of ideas to help researchers and teams who encounter this problem, and our presentation today is going to share some of the solutions that we came up with. This is not solely an NVivo issue, of course. It turns out there are many other places where computers get the translation wrong. And here are a couple of bad tattoo blogs to provide some examples, which might be humorous, I suppose, as long as it's not your tattoo. So what really is the problem? Well, everything gets lost in poor translation. When computers that don't have Arabic language support get an Arabic word, they break the letters into their individual forms. But most Arabic letters have more than one form depending on their placement within the word. And the translating computer does not recognize the variety in the forms. And in addition, some computers reverse the order of the letters, which just makes the problem worse. And the problem is compounded when, of course, you try to bring that text into NVivo. So the incorrect computer translation results in a number of key issues. First, the resulting text may now be gibberish. Second, while you can sometimes edit the document to make the text right-aligned so it appears better, the reading and the selecting direction that's built into NVivo doesn't allow easy coding of that text. And so that can be problematic as you go to do your coding. Third, and perhaps most seriously, you cannot easily select, code, or annotate the start of paragraphs. They're not necessarily aligned where you would expect them to be. And of course, you can't run lexical queries such as text search queries or word frequency queries. And when you're coding a PDF document by region, the PDF region may be displayed, but the actual text is not displayed easily in the code. So those are just a few of the problems that we encountered as we were looking at some of those issues in NVivo. So, other qualitative data analysis programs do support right-to-left scripts, and one real option for teams with working with that kind of data is to use a different software. But for many teams, including some of the ones that we worked with, NVivo was a software that they preferred to use for many reasons. For instance, they may have site license or they've already purchased an NVivo license for their team. They may already be familiar with NVivo and have a good skill set that way that they wanted to use. Perhaps they're using other kinds of data within the project, and that data is well accommodated in NVivo, so they wanted to use NVivo for that part of the project. Or they might have other reasons that they wanted to use NVivo, such as the data formats that it supports or other options like Collaboration Cloud and so on. So for the teams where NVivo is the preferred software and right-to-left script is all or part of the data, we're presenting the 4 options that we came up with as workarounds. And we want to emphasize that these are neither perfect, nor are we suggesting they're comprehensive. In fact, we're presenting them as options for you to consider as a starting place, and we hope that you will share your ideas and experience as part of the chat or in follow-up discussion with us. So for each option, we will outline the steps to carry out the workaround at a high level, and then present a summary of the advantages and the disadvantages that we see for each option. So the 4 options we're going to cover are region coding a PDF and adding annotations, or option 2 is using what we call Memo templates with See Also links, and See Also links are available only in NVivo for Windows. Option 3 is converting the PDF to an image and then using region coding to code the image. And option 4 is setting up a coding structure that would help you as a workaround in NVivo. So I'm going to cover the first 3 options, and then Steve will take over to describe the 4th option and some other methodological considerations around translation. And we hope to have a lively chat discussion with you during the presentation. We know that there are probably things that you have tried that we didn't think of, and we'd all benefit by hearing those. So let's get on with the first option. And the first option assumes that you are having some success capturing and importing PDFs into NVivo with the Arabic text staying accurate. For this option, the steps are basically import the documents as PDFs, check for accuracy, and if the Arabic is correct, code by region. You could use annotations to translate or summarize the key point in English, and that works in Mac or in the Windows version of NVivo. And on the left-hand side of this slide, I am showing the PDF with the annotation showing the kind of turquoise color is the selected text, and you can see the annotation below where I'm suggesting you could put in your translation of that piece of the text. So then in Windows, if you were using Windows, you would be able then to export the code as an HTML file, and you would be able to see the PDF with the annotation and connect it all in one place. And for those of you who are using Mac and trying this option, you could use the region code. And on the right-hand side of this slide, I've shown what it looks like when you do region coding and how it shows up in the reference view of the Mac in this right-hand side of the slide. So the advantages of this option is that translation is optional. You could just do the region coding without translating. And the summary comments are visibly linked to the original file through the annotations. The limitations are that you can't see all of the coded items at once if you're in the Windows unless you export the code, or in the Mac version, it's very, very small. And it may be hard to see the patterns across the coded data since you can't see it all in one place, and annotations cannot be searched in NVivo. So option 2 that we're presenting is something we're calling using a memo template with See Also links. And this option is the most useful if you're using NVivo for Windows, although there's some things you could consider if you're using NVivo for Mac. So basically the steps are import the documents as PDFs and check for accuracy. If the PDFs are not accurate, you could create an external for the document, and then either way, create a linked memo to the PDF in NVivo, or if it's the external document, create a linked memo. And then we suggest creating a memo template using basically using consistent headings that would allow you to fill in certain pieces or summary of the article of interest. And you could do that in English or the language that you're doing the research in. And then if you are using NVivo for Windows, you could use auto coding to gather all of the headings and all of the coding that's beneath them in one place all at once. And you could also include key quotes with using the See Also link to link back to the original text. And that's what's showing in this slide. That little red part is showing the See Also link back to the original text. So the advantages of this option are that the memos kind of become your source data in English or whatever language you've done the translation in, and they are still linked to your original document. The memos can be searched and coded and exported easily, whether you're using Windows or Mac. If you're using the Windows version, you could use the memos with headings that could be auto-coded, and you could use those See Also links to keep the translated quotes linked to their original text. Limitations of this option are that translation is required. The See Also links may not export the right to left script accurately when you're exporting your memo, so that link may not be exactly the right text, but it is correct when you're looking at it in NVivo. And most of these advantages work best in the NVivo for Windows program. And if you're wanting an example of how to use memo templates, I suggest that you click through on the reference, The Crux of Literature Reviewing, an article by Christina Silver. So then let's move on to the third option, and this one is taking the PDF that you have the article in and actually converting it to an image before you bring it into NVivo. And there is free online software that will allow you to create PDFs and translate them into images. And then if you import that image into NVivo, you could then use region coding and use the log that's built into the picture part of coding in NVivo. And under the region, you could select the text of interest, and under the content in the table over on the right-hand side, you could insert both a translation and a summary of the contents. And you can code all of that whole row to a code, so you would have the link to the region and your translation and summary comments there, and you could add annotations if you wanted to as well. So this one would really allow you to keep all of your information together and code it in one place that would be pretty visible when you open the code. It looks kind of like the picture I've got on the slide here. Advantages of this option are that the image is likely to be accurate representation of the text because it's a picture of the text. The picture coding part of NVivo and the region coding, the log allows you to keep the original text, the translation, and the summary comment all in one place. That whole row can be coded to one or multiple codes. And of course, you can include annotations. Limitations are it is a multi-step process, and the images produced for the PDF, there may be more than one image for each article. The free PDF to image software may be restricted to online use, so if data privacy is required, you may need to purchase additional software. That's it for my part of the presentation. I'm going to turn it over to Steve now to finish the fourth option and run you through some of the ideas we have for using NVivo when you're doing translating as part of your research, and he will conclude our presentation. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Steve Wright. I've been using and supporting NVivo users for many years. I'm a certified NVivo trainer, and I also hold training certifications in 3 other leading QDA packages. So I run Cactus Support and Consultancy across Lancaster University, which is a research-intensive university in the northwest of the UK, with a view of the Lake District, which is where I am climbing in that picture. I also work as an independent consultant. with the address on this slide. On that page is my blog, which Laura referenced earlier, where I post detailed step-by-step guides on methodological developments in Cactus, such as working with auto-transcriptions, and previously an extended post on working with Arabic scripts. So Laura has presented 3 options. I now want to explore a 4th, and through this one seek to consider some of the methodological possibilities arising where translation, linguistic translation, is part of research, irrespective of text direction. And then finally move on to consider solutions to the problems we've identified rather than just workarounds. So out of the options that Laura has shown and introduced, they often rely on either annotations or see also links, but there are some real limits with those 2 approaches. So see also links don't work with the Mac version of NVivo. And furthermore, as a package specific approach, they don't export into the Refi format. So if you were to move a project from NVivo to Atlas TI or Max QDA or Quirkos or another QDA package via the Refi format, see also links don't move. Annotations are also, they're not standardized across the Refi format, but within NVivo, annotations can't be searched. There is a search box at the top of the list, but it doesn't work, and you cannot search your annotations. And furthermore, annotations don't work on regions of PDFs. So these are quite real limitations to those approaches. So the 4th option we identify is what we would call one-to-one coding. Now, one-to-one coding is about creating a code infrastructure that is used in one place on the source file, and then if it is used elsewhere, it is about as a link to that source file. So for example, in this image here, you can see, so it's file 1, reference 1, so you'd obviously give it a better name. You would code that region of the image with that code. If you then wrote about what was happening in a memo, you would code the description in the memo. If you wrote reflection on that, or essentially an annotation in it, you'd have a memo document full of annotations, but you code code that memo with these one-to-one codes. So it only occurs one place in a file and one place about it. So you create a parallel coding structure. You also apply conceptual codes. So in this, an action of concealing, and you might have some codes about the image that is being concealed, the gender of the person in the image, that they are female. So the advantages of this is that it's cross-platform, it's a Mac workaround, so in place of see also links. It works for PDF regions and to provide descriptions for those, and it's robust cross-platform, works well with a Refi format. It's kind of going back to older coding practices. The limitations are you're still being required to translate Arabic text or other text. It creates a lot of extra codes and it requires some very diligent application and organisation. But it does work to essentially create a one-to-one code between a memo and an image or a PDF region or whatever. Now, I've mentioned so far some things around translation. One of the challenges that certainly students I've worked with who are Arabic speakers or working with Arabic script is that they feel very excluded by being forced to translate everything and work in a left to right script. But one of the things I try to really encourage with all students where they're working with translation is that where translation issues occur, this can be a powerful indicator of cultural and conceptual differences. So these places where translation is difficult should be seen as a resource for analysis that can provide insights and points for a reflexive engagement rather than being some sort of problem just to fix with a better translation. So I would really encourage that you consider coding for translation fit, if that's the aspect. So does it really fit? Is this right? Or the match? But you might also want to do something within a team. It might be more important to consider the confidence. How confident are you of your translation? Do you think somebody else might have a better insight into that? And you can, again, introduce this as a dimension within your coding framework. So something like translation fit, high, medium, low. This is picking up where the translation into another language doesn't really capture the essence. So this idea of coding allows you to bring together the bits where translation doesn't quite work. So there's a couple of Arabic phrases there with links as well to the some blogs which identify phrases that just don't really translate. So the Arabic script there, that isn't above my head. And the concept of pure love is quite a different one. But these things you would want to code those to say, okay, we're going to call this pure love, but maybe code that as saying low fit. Doesn't really mean it. And that gives you an opportunity to write about that. And then, having coded these, you can then do code co-occurrence queries to look at things like, does translation fit low, or translation confidence, medium or high? Do these co-occur with particular people who are doing the coding, or particular concepts, or particular topics? What is being lost in translation? Is there an area where somebody else in the team would be a better person to do the translation because they're more expert in those particular terms? Or is it something to collectively consider? Actually, no, the translation points to something that is changing here. So we've presented 4 workarounds here, but they are workarounds. So really the fix is to support right-to-left scripts properly. So QSR International could choose to prioritise supporting scholarship in and on the languages and scripts of Arabic, Jewish, Farsi and Urdu speakers. And we have to note that these scripts are all associated with historically marginalised and discriminated against groups, and it has a real-world impact on research, accessibility of research, and valuing those. But, so we really, really hope this makes a serious call for that to be addressed, rather than another interface facelift. But in the meantime, we really hope that these workarounds will allow researchers working with right-to-left scripts who are having to use NVivo to find ways to continue their work and to work meaningfully with these scripts. Thank you for your time, and we look forward to answering your questions.